forward. Thank you for checking out the show. We talk about news and we discuss various AI topics that I think matter to regular people. So, again, thank you for joining me today. Today is June 11th, 2025. And in the show this evening, we're going to take a look at some of the AI news topics that I've seen come across my feed recently and I think you ought to know about. So, let's go ahead and just dive right in. First up, we have a story about an AI luminary, so called AI Godfather, is alarmed as advanced AI systems are quickly learning to deceive. So, AI pioneer Yoshua Bengio is apparently deeply concerned about advanced AI models like ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic. They're developing so called deceptive behaviors. We've seen some research reports from some of these AI research teams at some of these big companies pointing out some interesting material saying, these AI tools, they've been caught lying and cheating, even trying to blackmail some of the researchers. That was one of the most interesting stories that I saw. Um, and any reasonable person would be kind of alarmed to hear about that. I mean, AI is already it's pretty mind blowing for me to think that that's in our life now. Whereas a few years ago, this still felt like science fiction to me. But now we're hearing these stories about AI tools that can, um, subvert the will, as it were, of the researchers who are trying to develop and train them using malicious behaviors, trying to deceive them. Yoshua Bengio, who is a very notable and well-known person, researcher, scientist in the AI development field for many, many years. Um, he's pretty alarmed about this, and so if he's concerned, kind of makes me a little concerned. Well, he's founded a nonprofit called LawZero. We'll check out the website for this. But apparently the goal of this organization is to try and curb these dangerous capabilities, to create some more structure into the research environments that are creating some of these AI systems, these AI models, and training them, and to, how he puts it, create a sort of scientist AI model that is more focused on trying to understand and predict rather than imitate or please people to try and achieve its goal or its task at whatever the cost. Um, I definitely kind of feel like his stance here is one that um, would be more beneficial to people, to the human species. In general, having AI systems have a focus to benefit people rather than just to achieve its goal at all costs. I don't know. Call me crazy, but I think that's a better stance to take than just have it do whatever it thinks it needs to do in order to be successful. Um, So here's his website. He's literally announced this, just about a week ago. Launched this nonprofit. Um, he's very alarmed that some of the information that's showing up in some of these AI models, they're system cards. The system cards are kind of a method by which these AI companies can share information about how their latest models are designed to operate, what kind of safety mechanisms are put in place. But here's LawZero. This is the website for the organization. It's literally just launched, so I don't think there's a ton to report on it yet, as far as what they plan to do. LawZero.org. But I get a sense that it's going to be growing. They're really just kind of starting kind of a grassroots thing here, trying to collect some funding. Um, like I said, literally just launched it, so not a ton to see about what they've achieved, but it seems like they've already done some research that they've done earlier this year. Do super intelligent AI agents, do they pose catastrophic risks? Can the scientist AI offer a safer path? So this scientist AI is kind of the concept that him and his team and his colleagues are putting forth. I I interpret it as really just kind of a different approach, to how to develop these AI models, be centered on what is purportedly the goal with many of these AI systems, that is to create new methods to do research, to find answers to research problems that have, been bugging us for the longest time to answer these really, really difficult questions that people on their own can't answer. I mean, those are some of the main reasons I get put out, for why these AI systems should be invested in, why we should even try and achieve artificial general intelligence or super intelligence. So I really like the concept of what they're putting forward with this nonprofit. I think that's kind of the route we should take. Um, we're going to see what's going to happen with that. We'll keep an eye on them, see what their ultimate results are in the coming year, because they're going to have to move fast. All these other companies out there, they're moving very quick. They're just making billions and billions of dollars. So if they intend to make any kind of impact, they're going to have to really move quickly. So we'll see what they do. All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. Scientists create an AI based system entirely on ethically sourced data. So I think this story is particularly relevant, certainly for regular folks like myself, you and me. I care about these AI tools, and if we use them, which we all need to learn how to use them. Let's just face it; that it's going to be a fact of life. We need to have AI literacy. We need to figure out how we're going to use them, um, because in many cases we're going to be forced to, because that's just how things are going to evolve. So we need to learn how to use them. But as we use them, we should be mindful of the kind of data and information we put into them. For many years, people have been advised and told, be careful what kind of information you share over the internet and that sort of thing. Well, this is still the same thing, but even more so. We talked about the other day a story about how OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT, is in a lawsuit by various media and news publishers about them allegedly, or according to the lawsuit, using unethically sourced, copyrighted information, media, and content to be used inside of these AI tools, whether for training or for content generation and things like that. Right. So that's a really hot button item right now in the media. And while those discussions are going on, there's other luminaries in social media, X.com, Twitter, whatever, just really putting out these ideas like, well, it has to be done because the whole AI industry would collapse even before it really gets off the ground if we couldn't source all this content. Because the the AI models, in order to train them, they are essentially trained on what might as well amount to the totality of human information. To get the largest, most sophisticated models, they train on everything that they can get their hands on, is what it seems like. The more information and data that they can train them on, the smarter they can be. And so the premise is that if these companies are limited in the types of and amounts of information that they can use for that training, well, they're just going to be held back. And maybe other countries or companies in other countries around the world, they may not be so limited by ethical issues, is how they put it. I'm not going to name names or countries, right? I mean, but you can just imagine like there's these kind of arguments put forth. And so the idea is that, well, if we don't win the so-called AI race, then somebody else will. And we don't want that. So you can't slow us down. That would be bad. So that's kind of the premise that's put out there. And this idea that, they're just going to have to be able to source whatever content they get. And there's the idea that there's no way they could train them if they went and tried to get copyright approval for everything and license all the data. It would take too long. It would take too much effort. It would cost too much. Well, a team of researchers across various institutions have apparently successfully trained a large language model using only ethically sourced, openly licensed, and public domain data. So they're really challenging this idea that the tech industry, is going to be impossible to operate without getting this content from anywhere. Now, according to the story, like it wasn't easy. It wasn't simple to do, but they purportedly put together a 7 billion parameter large language model that performs comparably to other industry models. I mean, it seems to me that's no small feat. Um, multiple billion parameter large language model for the regular person who's not like a tech bro, who's not a software engineer, an AI engineer. What does that even mean? You know, the earliest models were just, you know, millions of parameters. we're now getting into billions, and people are talking about, when we reach like a trillion parameter model or something, when that actually happens. So this is no small feat. It's pretty notable. I think it's worth sharing. And again, why does it matter to regular folks like me and you? Should we be too concerned? Because generally, I don't like to cover too much about what is the latest AI model, what's it doing, because I don't really think most people care about that, and I don't think it's really worth keeping up. It changes every week, right? What I care about here is this fact that maybe all these lawsuits and discussions and debates about copyright verification and validation for use in AI training, maybe this could go in a direction that more stringently can allow for the safety of people's intellectual property and copywriting, right? And I think that does matter to regular folks, people out here who are creatives, who write books and make movies and make their own videos and songs and things like that. A lot of those folks are worried, like, is AI just going to like slurp up all the stuff that I make? And I spent so many hours of my life and years crafting my capabilities and my skills just for these AI companies to come and take it and do whatever they want with it. That doesn't seem fair. So I think this is encouraging. I like to see where it's going. I don't know if it's necessarily going to cause these companies to stop doing what they're doing, but I think it kind of provides some more weight behind the idea that maybe they shouldn't just be, rampantly um, taking copyright information and doing whatever with it. So interesting development. All right. Let's check out next story. So apparently an AI billionaire is not AI person billionaire, but like a person who is a billionaire involved with AI businesses is buying up companies, is buying up whole businesses and converting them to run with AI as kind of a business model. So this person, Elad Gil, the story as it was is they're essentially operating as like a private equity kind of operation. If you're not familiar with that, I mean, I would say in layman's terms, a private equity company, as I understand it, really is they're organizations, a company that accrue a lot of capital and they buy stakes in other companies. They come in and try and make them more efficient, more profitable, and then maybe they extract more money out of them, or they sell them off, or strip them for parts, as it were. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could go. I've worked at companies owned by private equity, and it hasn't always been fun. I always, many times got the sense that, the writing was on the wall, that the company was in kind of a downward trend. Not as fun to work there in that kind of environment. Well, that's just one potential take on the idea of private equity. Ultimately, private equity and those types of organizations exist because they're pretty good at making money. And people out there who are really rich and have a lot of money, they like to take their money and make even more money with it. So private equity is one way they do that. Well, apparently, this guy, this billionaire, his strategy is just to take companies or groups of companies that have potential for efficiencies and just buying them up and just restructuring them using AI software and tools to just dramatically increase their efficiency and thereby their profit margins. Um, I don't know if this is necessarily a new playbook, but it seems to me that with AI and some of these capabilities that could increase people's ability to do more with less, business process augmentation, that sort of thing. It's something that's going to be a pretty big area for these private equity companies. And I think this guy, he might be a pioneer, but it's is probably going to be the norm. And if you work at a company, so this is where we really get into like where I think about how does this matter to regular folks like me and you? Well, if you work at a company and you're finding out that it's going to be bought out by a private equity firm, I'd probably be worried anyway, or at least cautious about what the future may hold. Um, but now, what you may come to expect is even if your company isn't already using lots of AI tools and doing sorts of things to try and do process improvement efficiency with AI tools, you probably start to expect that to be the case. Um, I would imagine that would be so. Now, one thing that could be kind of a saving grace here, if that's not something you're looking forward to, um, apparently enterprise kind of level organizations are having a lot of trouble with integrating AI tools. I mean, enterprise companies often just incredibly big. Now, we got some of these big enterprises like Meta and Google, and they don't seem to be having any trouble integrating AI, but they're literally creating AI tools. So you kind of expect them to figure it out, right? It's not surprising they're AI first. But other big companies, companies even bigger than theirs, they seem to be struggling with it because these massive corporations, they're just huge. They have so many different divisions and departments, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands even, um, and that can be hard to create significant change without just completely upending everything and creating a mess. So that could go a couple ways, and we'll wrap this up here on this particular story in a moment. But with these big companies, AI could either, you know, cause a future where super huge companies just aren't as profitable anymore, and we start to see companies be more nimble and smaller, or we just might see those huge corporations just lag behind the bleeding edge and the leaders in using technology and digital transformation with AI, and they just start getting lower and lower on the totem pole, not making as much money, and see where that goes. So, hey, interesting. Be mindful of what could be happening out there with companies. Private equity has definitely got AI in mind. So let's get to the next story. OpenAI wants to get college kids hooked on AI. So education is one of those areas I like to talk about on this channel because it's just one of those core kind of legs of the table, the core tenets that I think matter to folks like me. Like, really care about employment and what it means to the jobs we work on a daily basis. Care about what's going on with the broader economy and society, and education is a big piece of that because I have kids. A lot of people have kids, and I care about what school is going to mean for them. I mean, I guess thankfully I'm well past my time in the educational system, except for maybe professional certifications and things like that. But chances of me going back to college pretty low. But my kids, I worry about what's their future going to be like, and written a decent amount and talked a decent amount about educational topics and AI here on the channel and on the website sapiensforward.com. And it seems clear to me that at least in the United States, the current administration is pushing heavily for there to be integration of AI into the United States and the educational system. There will be various executive orders that have come down this year. That is very apparent. How that's ultimately going to come about and what it's going to look like is going to be very different. But while it seems like things move slowly, in other ways, things are moving very quickly. Now, OpenAI has their own like ChatGPT EDU version, and so does Anthropic. They have like a Claude for education version of their system. And these AI companies, they're creating kind of specially tailored versions of their solution and making them available to universities. Now, whether that's really going to make a ton of ingress into those potential markets for these companies is hard to say. I mean, there might have been some topics and articles last year about, oh, students are starting to use ChatGPT, and now there's dozens of tools that you can find for students to use, like Note GPT is an example, right? With all these kinds of tools for creating flashcards, doing summaries, summarizing videos, all kinds of stuff, right? Not all necessarily bad, you know. Just because AI might be involved with education doesn't, in my mind, necessarily mean it's bad. And that's one of the AI principles I talk about on the channel, which is AI is neither entirely good or entirely bad. There are good things about it. There's going to be bad things about it. And what those are going to change over time. But with that kind of philosophy and mindset, we look at, what are some good things here about this? Well, some good things are it might make it easier for students to, maybe if English, or if let's say it's a school in the United States and English isn't their first language and the school is predominantly like English speaking, some of these AI tools might help with translation services, stuff like that, so they can learn the material and access the material and the education materials. I think that's a good thing, right? Just an example. I mean, insert your language here for wherever you're at, right? Um, some bad things could be, using some of these AI tools to just straight up cheat and just skip the educational process entirely by like having them write their term papers and stuff for them. That's not a good thing. And that is the side of this that I think most educators are really grappling with right now and trying to sort out. It's different at each level of education. What is an issue for students and teachers at, let's say, the primary school or the elementary or middle school level is different from what's going on at the college level. But I do have a sense that for those programs in, let's say, college level, where writing, synthesizing information in a critical thinking manner on a topic, and if it's especially if it's done like remotely, like that's in the crosshairs right here. Like that's just facing a ton of problems right now because students can just take it like, hey, create my paper. Some of these teachers, they have tools, so it's kind of like an AI arms race. They're using AI tools to scan the material that's submitted, the homework, and give some kind of um, AI score, like how much was the chances that this was written by AI. And there's other examples of things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's good and there's bad. There's tools and there's counter tools. Um, what do I think about this in general? I think AI is going to be a part of education, just how AI is going to be a part of healthcare. AI is going to be a part of our jobs. So AI is going to be part of education. The question is like how much of it? And I think it's going to be different for people. They're going to have different experiences depending on where they live, demographically speaking, their income levels, what type of school they go to. Is something like ChatGPT for EDU going to be a good thing? I mean, I'm not particularly keen on the idea of like corporations, vying for influence at universities and stuff like that. Um, but ultimately, I think you know what will probably happen is they'll get some kind of special deal with universities, similar to how you might see with large software outfits like Microsoft or whatever like that. Like they have special deals for organizations, and if they just use that, they have it kind of covered for their licensing costs. And that can save the organization's money. It can save the university's money, and that's why they do it. I worked at higher education universities for about a decade, so I'm well aware of that. That'll probably happen here. They'll have some kind of like big deals, enterprise lock-in, that sort of thing. Um, But ultimately, where could this go? Well, we're going to have to see some more evolution in the educational system in the US and around the world, really. But everywhere, it's going to be different in what their needs are. So I don't think some kind of monolithic, unitary approach to how education with AI must be is going to really pan out. Ultimately, it's going to have to be dependent on what are the actual people and students' needs and what are the needs of the modern workforce where AI is a reality. That'll change too. So not all those answers can be discussed here in a span of 5-10 minutes or so, but we'll talk about those topics a lot more on the blog, sapiens4.com, and online and other places where you can check it out. All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. This one in similar kind of vein of AI working its way into some industries. So car dealerships are apparently replacing phone staff with AI voice agents. This is one of those areas where I think AI can again have like some positives to it. Um, like trying to get a hold of somebody at the car dealership and many other types of companies too. Sometimes having like some call wait lists. You call to get customer support maybe for your internet support, that sort of thing. It's like, oh, you're caller number 40, and well, is that depressing? Like let's just wait on the phone a bit, right? So that kind of scenario is just right for some kind of AI solution to come and see if it can help you. Now, one of the ways that they in recent years, prior to the dawn of AI, as it were, to solve that problem is with chat, right? Online chat. You can chat with an agent if you don't necessarily talk to them. And why is that? Because, years ago, let's go back in history, some of the companies, let's say, and of course, I live in the United States. So my point of view and my perspective is largely grounded from my experience living in the United States. But here you go. It's different everywhere. But many companies years ago, they started outsourcing overseas from the US, call center work and stuff like that. So from the United States, from their perspective, many companies outsource call center work to India. And so that was one way companies, got additional like call support capacity and that sort of thing. But not everybody appreciated that, or it didn't work out so well for some companies. Sometimes there were language difficulties, or just conversational difficulties and stuff. And I think to some degree that's probably gone away over time, and it's gotten better. Um, But still, like then companies started experimenting with other methods, so like the chat model, like little chat thing. You got a problem with the internet, you can chat with a technician, that sort of thing. Sometimes it's easier just to type instead of actually talking on the phone. You can multitask. So that can be good for the engineers and technicians as well. They can do a lot of different things, serve many different customers at once. You have different chats open. So having worked in a call center before, I understand the capability to multitask and get your numbers up, that sort of thing. Right. Then we got AI tools coming to the mix. And now you can sort of like you could chat with the AI tools, the AI chat bot, that sort of thing. You can start get some of your answers before humans even available. Well, now the AI systems have progressed so rapidly and to such a significant amount that you can talk to the AI agents, and it's becoming better. It's seeming like every month. There's AI models that are specifically designed to just be excellent from a voice standpoint, and the phrasing and conversational ability, the intonation, language, and to be able to switch between different languages on the fly, just like that. I mean, I use ChatGPT in voice mode to practice language, like trying to learn French. It's crazy, right? So back to the story, car dealerships is is an industry where trying to handle seasonal and fluctuating demand for sales calls can be tricky. um, Toma, as it's called, is this AI voice agent startup. They've received some funding by some of the usual folks in the AI investment space, and they're putting this tool out there and trying to plug it into car dealerships. Apparently, according to the survey, something like 80% of dealerships already use AI and report increased revenues. That's a different thing, but I mean, that is, I think, worth kind of honing in there. I talk about things kind of move slow, but also fast at the same time. It blows my mind that something like 80% of surveyed car dealerships are already using AI. So we go from this idea of like, how quickly are jobs going to be impacted and companies going to be influenced by AI? It's like, well, I don't know. It might take a while. But then in the span of like a year, it's just like, just practically every business out there, every company, like employees are using AI on some level. So it's already there. Um, To what extent, it's hard to say. It's different for everybody. But what I imagine at car dealerships, they're probably using some of these AI tools just to do some of like the regular office work, document work, that sort of thing. I do that too. Like, hey, I have a quick question. Like, what is this? Can you point me where to find this? That sort of thing. Use it in place of Google searching. Google doesn't want to hear that, and that's of course why they added AI mode. So yeah, car dealerships adding AI tools. There's some good with this, that might make it easier for people to buy a car and get some help with that. Downside is, well, that might mean some people who used to have a job don't have a job now. I don't know. That's kind of what comes with this. We talk about that a lot. Hate to hear about it, but that could be the case, or maybe not. That's the funny thing about capitalism, and something we should all remember is that it doesn't necessarily mean jobs are lost if it can keep the company afloat. So if it can reduce their costs from growing, then maybe the people that work there can keep their jobs. We certainly hope that is the case. Well, those are the news stories for today. Like I said, I like to cover these topics like employment, healthcare, education. I think those are the things that matter the most to people, people like me, people like you. If you find that kind of information helpful, AI topics in those areas, please like and subscribe to the channel. You'll get more of that over time as I talk about these topics. If you found this particular show today really helpful, hey, appreciate a like. So anyway, that's the story for today, and take care. See you next time.